Everyone, my name is Alexandra Ignatovic, and I represent Burnaby, BC.
It's good to be here. Frankly, we feel right at home.
Hi guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. It's so greatly appreciated, truly is. Before we get started, let me give you my usual disclaimer. This video is for educational purposes only. Please do not take what I say as fact. Please always do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Next, if you have not liked, subscribed, or commented yet, please consider doing so. It really helps me out and I really appreciate it. So today we're talking about 25-year-old Alexandra Pesek. She was a former beauty queen. She actually first competed and won the Miss Burnaby pageant in 1984 before going on to compete for the title of Miss Canada in 1985. She was described as tall, blonde, beautiful, and striking with a wicked sense of humor. She and her family reside in Canada. Her parents were working class immigrants, and Alexandra was expected to get a job and be self-sufficient, which was exactly what she did. By the age of 20, she was working as a dental assistant 5 days a week, and on the weekends, she and her mother, Zdenka, would go to open houses to dream about the home that they would one day own. While at an open house one day, a woman and her husband, who are around the ages of Alexandra's mom, hear Alexandra and Zdenka speaking in their native tongue of Yugoslavian. This also happens to be their native tongue, so they strike up a conversation with the mother-daughter duo, and a fast friendship begins. The couple would introduce themselves as Sam and Yelka Pesek. She tells Alex and her mother that they own an automotive shop nearby called Sam & Sons Automotive. Oddly enough, Alexandra needs her car worked on at the time and shares this information with Yelka. Overjoyed by this information, Yelka tells Alexandra to take the car down to the shop to get her taillight fixed and to ask for her son, 27-year-old Joe Pesek. So, the following week, Alexandra takes Yelka up on her offer and she goes down to the shop and she meets Joe Pesek. The two decide to go out on a date, and from there, a relationship basically begins. And right off the bat, Joe and Alexandra are smitten with each other. He would always show up to her house with flowers. He would take her to the nicest restaurants. He would take her for rides on his bike, and he would take her for weekend trips away. A month into dating, Joe surprises everyone when he gets down on his knee and he asks Alexandra to be his wife. The families are overjoyed at the news, but the red flags begin to go up almost immediately after the proposal. Yelka wanted the bridesmaids to wear blue dresses, while Alexandra wanted the girls to wear red. Alexandra would end up getting her way because she's the bride, but Yelka would hold a grudge about this for a long time afterwards. I'm sorry, in what fucking world is that your choice to make? Unless I'm missing someone, doesn't the bride make those types of choices? Alex was doubting this marriage up until pretty much the day before the wedding. And against her better judgment, she decided to marry Joe on June 11th, 1988 in Vancouver, Canada. The day was described as absolutely beautiful, and the couple would then honeymoon in Hawaii. Once the honeymoon came to an end, the newlyweds returned home, transitioned into married life, and focused on their careers. It was also at this time that Yelka would begin going over to the couple's home while they were working and bring them groceries, clothing, and other necessities. And although that sounds wonderful, and it's such a nice gesture, and it's something that most couples would appreciate, these visits were without notice, and it was never anything that Alex or Joe had ever asked for. On top of this, Yelka was trying to control what Alex was wearing and what she was doing. This infuriated Alex, obviously, because she felt that her and Joe should be the ones that were making the decisions for themselves. And she's right. A few months after this, Yelka and Sam give Alex and Joe an offer that's really hard to refuse. They offer to put a huge down payment on a house for them, but, of course, there's stipulations. Could have seen that one coming. The home was a bungalow, and it was located about a block and a half from the Pesick's home. Joe and Alex would reluctantly agree because it really was the offer of a lifetime, or so they thought. On top of this, neither Joe nor Alex could have a say on what was on the inside of the home. Yelka and Sam purchased a majority of the appliances inside the home, and when Alex wanted to put a red stripe on the backsplash of her kitchen, she was told by Yelka that she was not allowed to do that. For the first year or so, Joe always had Alex's back and would sometimes go weeks without speaking to his mother in protest for the way that she was treating his wife. But on the other hand, Joe loved his mother very, very much, so he was definitely stuck in the middle of the two women that he loved most. And that can't be easy. Nevertheless, Alex was so happy with the way Joe was taking her side against her mother-in-law that it actually would end up bringing the couple closer together. In 1988, the couple announced that they would be expecting a baby. The families were ecstatic. Joe doted on Alex during her entire pregnancy. Alex had a wonderful pregnancy, and on July 7th, 1989, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy that they would decide to name Brandon. Almost immediately after Brandon was born, though, Yelka began lecturing her about every aspect of her parenting, down to how often she was breastfeeding the baby. The brand new parents, like most parents, didn't leave their baby's side for the first 6 months. Then, in the winter of 1990, about 6 months after baby Brandon's birth, Joe decided that the couple needed a night out together. Plus, he thought this would be, a good way to give his mother some QT time with her grandson. When the couple arrived to drop off Brandon, Yelka tells Alex not to worry about anything, going on to say that she was making a special tea for the baby that would make him sleep. No way. Alex adamantly told Yelka to not give the baby anything other than her breast milk. Because he's 6 months old, lady. What the actual is wrong with you? And I'm down with old school remedies. I truly am. And I believe in most cases they work the best. But a specialty for a 6-month-old? Oh, hell to the no, to the no. No freaking way. If you guys have any family, like old school family remedies, leave them down in the comments below, because I love old school family remedies. I truly do. The two have a wonderful night out together, and when they arrive back home, baby Brandon is fast asleep. Alex asks Yelka if she gave him that tea, even though she told her not to which she responds, "Yes, of course I did. Look how well he's sleeping." She runs over to baby Brandon, and he's not responding to her. She pinches the baby, and nothing. Scared to death, she rushes baby Brandon to the hospital, and thank the Lord that the baby would end up being okay. But to say this was the straw that broke the camel's back would be a major understatement. A huge fight would result from this, and after they return home from the hospital, Alex packs a bag and she takes the baby to her mother's home with her. Furious at the way Joe handles the situation, with his mother almost killing their baby, she decides that it's time to file for divorce. So she hires a lawyer, and that's exactly what she does. Telling the lawyer that Yelka had basically almost killed their baby and that she was in danger, and so was the baby, and that she was a kleptomaniac. And I know that sounds like that's just like a bitter daughter-in-law, but it's the truth. She was a klepto. She would steal random things from grocery stores, but not because she couldn't afford it, because they weren't rich, but they were well off. She could afford it. It was because she wanted to do it. She was like a legit kleptomaniac. When Joe receives word of what Alex had done, he and his family are infuriated. They see the divorce filing as a betrayal of sacred marital vows, further stating that Alexandra was a gold digger and the only reason she married Joe was so that she could take the family's money. So, it should come as no surprise that the divorce gets extremely ugly. The Pessicks fought Alex at every single turn, from custody to money to visitation to Brandon's life choices and in regard to the home. The Pessicks felt that because they had paid a major down payment on the house and bought most of the appliances inside of the home, that the home rightfully belonged to them. I mean, it doesn't, but I could see why they would feel that way. During the divorce, Joe's father filed a civil case against the two for $70,000, saying that he loaned this money to the couple for home renovations and that the money was never paid back to him. The judge presiding over the case would end up throwing out the suit. After months of battling, Alexandra would win full custody of baby Brandon, along with the home that the two shared and child support. Alexandra's in-laws were not allowed to see baby Brandon because they were so negligent with him. Joe and Alex's divorce would be finalized in November of 1991, and Alex would move back in with her mom. But Joe would find himself back in jail after he failed to pay Alex in his court-ordered child support. When it was time for court, Joe said that he couldn't pay the child support because he was unemployed, which is really funny because he works for his parents alongside his brother Serge Pessick. Alex would slowly begin to transition into her new life as a single working mom. But then strange things began happening to Alexandra that were pretty concerning to her. One day, a package arrives at Alexandra's door. There's no return address, but the box is addressed to Alexandra. Inside, she finds a book called The Death of Cindy James. This is a very popular, highly controversial true crime story out of Canada. The victim in the story is a woman named Cindy James. And let me give you a short overview of Cindy's story because it's actually incredibly relevant to the case. Cindy James was a nurse who would marry a man named Dr. Makepeace when she was 19 years old, and Dr. Makepeace was 18 years her senior. The two would end up divorcing in 1982, While Cindy was trying to get acclimated to her life, strange things began happening over a very extended period of time. And things just got worse and worse and worse. When I say extended period of time, I mean like 8 years. Long time. It started with like very short phone calls of heavy breathing or death threats. The calls would be only a few seconds long, which would make them untraceable back then, especially in the 80s. If you know, you know. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, then screw you because you're super young and I'm jealous. She also began getting letters sent to the house or dropped off at the house. The letters were threats that were written by someone like cutting and pasting letters from a magazine, which was a really big thing back in the day. I don't know if it still is, but it was a super huge thing back in the day. The letters would also include pictures, and some of them would be of Cindy herself. After a significant amount of time, Cindy decided she needed to go speak to police. The letters and the calls keep coming, but they are getting increasingly more graphic. So let me just warn you guys really quick that there will be 2 instances of animal cruelty. I'm going to tell them both to you right now. These are not in order, but I want to give you guys the chance to skip ahead if you don't want to hear it. So I'll just tell them to you now, and then we'll get that out of the way, and then we don't have to talk about it anymore. The first one day Cindy comes home from work, and she finds 3 dead cats hanging from her porch. Another day she comes home to find her dog sitting in his own feces, shaking with a black pair of stockings wrapped around his neck. But thankfully her dog was okay. The dog was fine. Okay, now we're done with the animal talk. That's it. We're done. Another night when she arrived home, she found her porch light smashed. Her phone lines were cut. Her friend Agnes found her in the backyard one day shaking with a black stocking wrapped around her neck. Cindy says if it wasn't for Agnes showing up and spooking them, that she would have been killed that evening. Raw meat is delivered to her door. Cindy eventually decides to move. She changes her name and she hires a private investigator. Her private investigator would be listening to audio in Cindy's home one night when he hears a struggle. He rushes over to Cindy's home where he finds her in her home with a knife through her hand and a letter attached to the knife that read, "You're dead, bitch." Police blame this incident on Cindy, stating that she did this to herself. They never took fingerprints in the home, on the knife, or on the letter. Shame on you. Worse than this, they told Cindy that they strongly believed that she was doing this to herself and lying about everything and telling her that they were sick of her drama. Could you imagine going through this and nobody believes you? Nobody believes her. Her friend Agnes and Agnes's husband spent the night at Cindy's home. Let me clarify. Minus her friends and her family, nobody believes her. The police don't believe her. Her friend Agnes and Agnes's husband spent the night at Cindy's home. In the middle of the night, Agnes's husband wakes up to flames in the basement. He goes to call 911, but the lines are once again cut. So a neighbor would end up calling the police for them. Police blame Cindy for staging the fire, claiming that since she walks her dog alone at night, she couldn't possibly be afraid of an attacker.
It's literally the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my whole entire life. The dumbest thing I've ever fucking heard. Cindy would eventually come out after a very long period of time dealing with this terror, claiming that she believes that it is her ex-husband, Dr. Makepeace, who's a psychiatrist, who is the one that is responsible for doing this. She says she kept this information to herself for so long because he threatened to kill her and her family and her friends. Police go to speak to Dr. Makepeace, the psychiatrist, who tells them that he believes Cindy suffers from split personality disorder. Police go to speak to Dr. Makepeace, the psychiatrist, who tells police that he believes Cindy suffers from split personality disorder, even though none of Cindy's doctors have ever diagnosed her with this. In May of 1989, Cindy goes to the grocery store and is never seen again. Her car is found with blood all over it, and her groceries are found in the trunk of her car. It would take 2 weeks for Cindy's body to be found in the front yard of an abandoned home. It was determined that Cindy died the day that she went missing. When she was found, her hands and feet were hogtied behind her. She had a needle injection mark, and she had black nylon stockings tied around her neck. Cindy was found 5 days before her 45th birthday after being dead for 13 days. The coroner's office would rule her death an accidental overdose, if you can believe that. So, police claim that Cindy injected herself with morphine, walked 1.5 miles, hogtied herself, then strangled herself. And if you believe that, I have a bridge that I can sell you. Because some people truly do believe this. I am not one of those people, clearly. And her family has never gotten justice for her murder. And it's awful. It's terrible. Specific passages of the book that detail some of the things that I just explained to you were highlighted in the book that was sent to Alexandra. After Alexandra reads the book, she would confide in her friends that she was scared her ex-in-laws were going to murder her. She would begin receiving whispering phone calls. Her porch lights were smashed. She found dead animals on her lawn. Her yard mysteriously caught on fire. She begins to get the feeling that she's being followed. Then one day, she actually is being followed. She races to her home with the man trailing her. When she pulls up, a man jumps out of a car. He's pointing a gun at her. And it was luckily he tripped, and that's what gave her enough time to run inside. The police were called, but the man was obviously long gone by then. After this, she decided it was time to hire a private investigator of her own. She actually hired the same private investigator that Cindy James hired. And he would end up playing a crucial role in this story, and may have been the reason that Alexandra was able to get the justice that she deserved. Then I can't help but think, like, she got this idea from the book that was sent to her. Karma, baby, karma. She began asking friends, family, and co-workers to always be with her because she was so scared to be alone. August 5th, 1992, Alexandra and her co-worker Bernice finished work for the day at their dental practice. At the dental practice, really. They arrive at the car. Alexandra gets into the driver's seat and Bernice gets into the passenger seat. Bernice happened to be bending down so that she could place her gym bag underneath the passenger's seat. And that's when she hears 6 shots ring out. Frozen in fear, she stays down until the shots stop and she hears the car speed away. While ducking down, she feels Alexandra's head hit her back, and she says that she knew at that moment that her friend was probably gone. She runs inside the practice and she grabs the dentist to come help. Alex was actually not dead when police arrived, but she would end up dying on the way to the hospital. Back at the scene, police secure Alex's vehicle. Because Bernice was spared, they can only conclude that it was most likely a targeted hit. But then on the other hand, who knows? If she was sitting up, I think it would have been one of those things where, well, if we hit you, we hit you. The gun that was used was a .380 caliber handgun. There were 4 bullets in the fender of the car and 2 bullets in Alexandra's head. It's also very important to mention that this was done in broad daylight on a very busy street with a lot of witnesses around. Witnesses that were able to identify the driver, the shooter, the car, and the license plate. These are seasoned criminals, guys. Seasoned. Crafty hitman work right there. Inside the console of Alexandra's car, police find a paper with a license plate number handwritten on it. The plate number on the paper is not a match for the plate number that witnesses got, though. When the police run the plate number from witnesses, it comes back as a stolen red IROC Camaro. Witnesses at the scene say that they saw 2 people sitting down the street in the red Camaro for at least 3 hours. They stood out to people because they had face coverings, baseball caps, and sunglasses in the middle of the day in August. That's not noticeable. It's actually people that were in a grocery store nearby thought they were going to rob the grocery store. After Alex got into her car, the Camaro drove up to the car. The second male leaned out of the passenger side window and shot before speeding away. Bernice was not ready to speak immediately after, but the dentist was, and he informed police about everything that the Pessicks had been doing to Alexandra leading up to the events of that day. When police spoke to Joe Pessick and his parents, all 3 of them had alibis that checked out. Joe was at the pool with his son. This was confirmed not only by witnesses at the pool, but also by the private eye that Alexandra had hired, and he had a receipt. Yelka and Sam were at the shop that day, and this was confirmed. Police weren't exactly convinced that they were completely innocent in this, though. But nevertheless, they decided to move on. Alexandra's private investigator handed police the plate number of the car that had been following Alexandra. The plates came back as registered to a man named Milan Nadadik. He was a close family friend of the Pessicks and even attended Joe and Alexandra's wedding. A few hours later, the getaway car was found abandoned, and police were able to get fingerprints and a strand of hair from the car. The prints found inside the car did not belong to Milan, nor did it belong to Joe, Sam, or Yelka. So, who the fuck did this, and how many players are there in this sick, twisted game? The prints ended up belonging to a man named Lawrence DeLorme. His prints were in the system from previous crimes that he had committed. Police were now convinced that this was a murder for hire. But who hired him? And if he was the driver, then who was the shooter? So police start following Milan and Lawrence. Then on August 10th, 5 days after Alexandra's death, police follow Milan to the Pesic home. He gets out of his car. He gets into the back seat of Yelka's car. And Yelka gets into the driver's seat. He then ducks down and police follow the car to a nearby shopping mall. Yelka and Milan get out of the car and they walk into the mall separately. Shortly after this, they exit the mall separately, get back into the same car, and Milan once again ducks down in the back seat. When they arrive back at Yelka's home, Yelka goes inside, Milan gets into his car, and he drives away. Police follow him to his house, and when he goes to get out, they go to approach him. While they're approaching him, $30,000 in cash falls out of his shorts. So he's arrested on suspicion of murder. The same day as Alexandra's funeral, and almost at the same time that her casket is being lowered into the ground. During a search of the Pesic's home, police find the gun that was used to kill Alexandra. The ex-girlfriend of a man named David Segoviano would eventually come forward to tell police that he admitted to being the one that killed Alexandra. Police ask her to wear a wire and try to get a confession from him on tape. But when they meet again, he decides not to really talk. He would only write answers down on a piece of paper and then he would flush them. But this was enough evidence for the police to, at the very least, secure a search warrant. So they go to the home and David's not there, but his roommate is. And he tells police that he remembers that day because when David came home, he cut his hair. He hands over the hair that David cut that day, and it is a match to the hair that was found in the stolen IROC. Yelka Pesic, Dave Segoviano, Milan Nadatic, and Lawrence Delorme are all charged with the murder of Alexandra Pesic. Police believe that Joe and Sam played a role, but they were never able to really prove it. At trial, a close friend of Yelka Pesic would come out to say that during the divorce, Yelka would repeatedly say that she wished she could find someone that would be willing to kill Alexandra. Further detailing to police that she was with Yelka on a walk. They were walking the dog, and she witnessed her set fire to Alexandra's tree in the front of her home. When she asked her why she was doing that, she said because she deserves it. She said that she saw the book, The Death of Cindy James, inside of Yelka's home, and that Yelka was obsessed with this book. Further going on to say that Yelka was the person that mailed a copy of the book to Alexandra. Yelka Pesic, David Segoviano, Milan Nadatic, and Lawrence Delorme were all found guilty of the murder of Alexandra Pesic and sentenced to life with a minimum term of 25 years. When Canada abolished the death penalty in 1976, this became the new mandatory sentence for first-degree murder. Yelka Pesic was released from jail on full parole in 2018. She and Sam are still together. They still live in the same home, and the family still runs the Sam and Sons family business. As for baby Brandon, who's now an adult, he lives with Alexandra's mother and has no contact with his father or grandparents. Okay, guys, if you're still here, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you and I appreciate you so, so, so very much. I really, really do. If you have any case suggestions, please email me, heartache527@yahoo.com. Please like and comment. Please subscribe if you feel so inclined to. And until next time, stay safe out there.